Oh, nice. 81 minutes. 81 minutes. Yeah, over and over and over. And when I finally get it to the point, yeah, then it fucks up again. And then when we finally get to the next, yeah, it just mysteriously keeps fucking up. Oh, I keep getting these mystery phantom apps. And when I clear them, oh, they're not mysteries. It's the app you're actually using, dummy. That has never done that for 2 years. It's 7 years of using your system. All of a sudden, it's normal for apps to clear the other apps. And you clear them, what you're using crashes. Oh no, that's not counting the 8 times in a row just to get to the point of taking the thumbnail. No, you're right, officers. That's why what I say never, he's making it up, he didn't do it. Yes, he did, because there's multiples of this Interpol. There's TPS, RCMP, CSIS, CSE, Vermont, yes there is, New York, yes there is. Jersey should be interested, but they're not. Jersey and Florida, you guys are slipping. Michigan's too fucked up to give a fuck. You're the only one, so you know what you're doing. No, I purposely have a system that can only handle so much interference because the FCC says it has to. So when you start interfering, hey, there's only enough room in the box for one fucking pig, man. I'm just dealing with my poison, I get it. It's that was some sort of poor quality internet, so you keep flashing the poor internet quality thing on my screen, suggesting I get new internet and shit. Right? That was subtle too. That's two separate things. No, the internet connection's fine. You ping my router over and over, it cuts you off. If there's 6 of you doing it, it'll block out all of you because it doesn't know which one you started with. It's just a router. Yeah, it's so dead simple. You can't hack your way around. It's like we're hacking firewalls today. No, you're not. You're looking for an exploit. But even now we're your exploits. So I know that this Radio Okapi of the Congo was broadcasting again later. It's like an hour ago. Oh, I'm gonna be all upset about the Beijing hour. No, these idiots don't listen. Beijing hour, roundtable, Beijing hour repeat. The fuck do I care if I listen to one first or the other? No, same information. Yeah, all that effort they spent sending extra data. Here I am saving bandwidth by waiting for the rerun. Moron. What's your monthly cell phone bill, officer? I'm just dealing with my poison, I can get it so cool. It comes with a whole what, gigabyte or 10 gigabytes a day? I'm just dealing with my poison, I can get it so cool. Supposedly I used 180 in the last 4 weeks. I'm just dealing with my poison, I can get it so cool. Oh, I see. All right. Page down. I'm just dealing with my poison, I can get it so cool. There's no hourly news with the Beijing hour. So the news always comes. The news always comes on the hour and for 5 minutes after. To learn Chinese is the last 5 minutes of the hour. You know? I don't know what this is. My comic books when I was a kid had Swahili lessons in the back. So, not even joking. There's no skipping ahead or back, is there? So this player has pause and play, stop. I don't know what the difference is. I think one lets you stay on the same programming we're listening to, maybe. When it stops, let's go live. There's a loop button. I don't know what that does for this. I'm letting some little French-speaking African kid, Congolese kid, make this. Player. There's not much time left in the I'm a soldier. Never smoked a joint. Yeah, it's an exam. I never even fucking rolled it up yet. Facebook, Twitter, Facebook Messenger. That's what it's like. Facebook. I think that's WhatsApp. Skype. I don't know what that is. It's a this is SMS. Can you send SMSs to this website? Can I SMS this to star 680? This one's interesting. We don't have none of these. LinkedIn. Oh. And Reddit. And Gmail. So. Permission requested. Yeah, by the way, don't ever use Google Play Store for anything. I can't get the fucking breadcrumbs off this fucking machine. It keeps asking Google for permission to do stuff. I never give it permission to do shit.
I'm just dealing with my voice and I can get it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it so woke. I'm just dealing with my voice and I can hit it.
Oh, it's the hourly news. Okay. The Beijing round table, right? The round table has news, right?
开球. So how about it's time to
fuck's sakes, fuck
该
off.
开球了.
And this is
It's
what I'm
time to
talking
tee off.
about. Everything
So
I do
how
in
do you say
incognito
it's
tabs
time
is
to
getting
tee
saved
off?
to
It's
cache and
right.
showing up when I fucking restart it.
Yes.
That was why you, what the fuck is that?
You're listening to China Plus Radio, connecting you with China and the world.
Apparently not, because we're a minute late, you fuck. Did I go anywhere near the player? No. Now I've got one play, one pause, and a different app that's not loaded play. Yeah, that's right. It's not loaded, so I was doing that.
General Administration of Customs says that meat products from the company that have already arrived in
Most you
China
can do is make
will
my
be
rap
temporarily
music play over the
sequestrated.
news. You know how many times I got screamed at
Pepsi
for
has
that as a
suspended
kid?
production
Yeah,
of one of its food factories in Beijing after some of its staff members were confirmed to be infected with the novel coronavirus. Fan Zhimin is the public relations director of PepsiCo Greater China. She says the company responded quickly after the first case was confirmed.
监测到新发地批发市场输入个案后
After our first confirmed case linked to the Xinfadi wholesale market was found, we immediately initiated an emergency response and took measures such as suspending production and operation, setting up the products, disinfecting the environment, and quarantining the personnel.
She adds that they have investigated the products and the factory environment, and the tested products are safe. The products made after the infections have been sealed up and are banned from shipping out of the factory. All of the factory's employees have received nucleic acid tests and are now being quarantined at home. The factory mainly processes grains and produces potato-related food such as chips. China's e-commerce platforms registered record-high sales during the mid-year online shopping festival amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Alibaba's online marketplace, Tmall, saw deals reach new highs of nearly 700 billion yuan, or about $100 billion. JD.com recorded about 270 billion yuan in orders during the shopping festival, an increase of over 30% year-on-year. Other major platforms, such as Suning.com, also set a new record in sales. New York City will enter phase 2 of reopening later today. About 300,000 New Yorkers are expected to be able to return to work. The city has recorded more than 200,000 COVID-19 infections since March, with over 17,000 deaths. It started to ease pandemic restrictions 2 weeks ago. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he does not rule out the possibility of bidding for another presidential term if constitutional amendments are adopted. He made the remarks in a recent TV interview.
If he adopts,
Russia will hold a referendum on a set of constitutional amendments on July 1st. One of them will allow Putin to seek 2 more 6-year terms as president when his current mandate ends in 2024. The Iranian Deputy Minister of Justice for Human Rights says the country is ready to swap prisoners with other countries on humanitarian grounds amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Mahmoud Abbasi says they have extradited over 100 Iranian prisoners from Georgia and transferred a number of foreign prisoners to their own countries over the past 2 months. He says over 2,000 Afghan convicts in Iran can also be transferred to their country. Iran has also announced its readiness to extradite 44 Pakistani prisoners and is awaiting the country's response. It has also swapped prisoners with the United States. A top advisor to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says that Palestinians reject any annexation of the Jordan Valley and West Bank settlements by Israel. Nabil Abu Rudani says this is an issue of principle, and that the Palestinian leadership will maintain and fight for this national position.
The Palestinian people have come a long way. The coming 10 days are dangerous and crucial. Accordingly, we will see if the American administration and Israel retract their position, despite our lack of confidence with the Israel and the American administrations.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to annex the Jordan Valley and all Israel West Bank settlements. Netanyahu's plan is in line with President Donald Trump's Middle East plan, which has been rejected by the Palestinians. The process could begin as early as July 1st. European and Arab countries have warned that Israel's move would violate international law and threaten any hopes for a 2-state solution. That's the news. I'm Wen Jie.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing.
Roundtable, connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day. Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal.
East meets with the West, and the West and West.
You're listening to a flashback of
They
Roundtable,
understand they're to the
an
west of
in-depth
us.
discussion on the hottest topics in China. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm He Yang, joined by Huang Shen and Patrick Flannery. Good as always to have you with us on this show. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, how has the pandemic shifted the views property ownership and renting entails? We take a deep dive into the renters market after the outbreak of COVID-19. Also on the menu in Roundtable's Heart to Heart segment, we answer your questions about life, career, news items, and just about anything. If you have a question, we help you find an answer. To participate, please send your thoughts and voice memos to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com. We air your question first and give you that reply on the live show. But first, on today's roundtable, renters' priorities and preferences have changed in the months after the coronavirus outbreak. More tenants in Beijing apparently say that they now prefer to rent an entire apartment independently rather than sharing with housemates until they can afford to purchase a property. So yeah, this is happening now as we're looking into surveys and reports about how people's ideas towards renting and owning property has changed. So before we get into the details of that, Huang Shen, please give us an overview on the home prices in China right now.
Yeah, in general, home prices remain pretty stable, but with some mild increases. And because according to China Daily's reports, on June the 15th, China continued to see a generally stable housing market in May, and with home prices in 57 of the 70 major cities showing month-on-month increases in a new home prices, and the 41 showing month-on-month increase in second-hand ones. So data from the National Bureau of Statistics revealed that new home prices in four first-tier cities, including Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, rose by 0.7% month-on-month in May, and to be more specific, Beijing sees an increase of 0.5%, Shanghai is 0.8%, while Guangzhou is 0.3%, and Shenzhen is 0.6%. So 0.5 percentage points higher from 1 month earlier. And last month's prices of resold housing in first-tier cities edged up 1.1% month-on-month, and changed from the 1 month earlier, where Beijing was like 1.8%, Shanghai was 0.6%, Guangzhou was 0.4%, and Shenzhen was 1.6%. And for those who cannot afford to buy a house in Beijing, it seems like more now prefer renting a whole apartment by themselves.
Interesting. So the figures you gave us at first, it pretty much captures what's going on in the property market of owning property, right? And aren't you a little surprised that when you've got the COVID-19 situation happening and then there isn't really a dip in housing price?
Well, it's interesting because the timing is what we just heard. These numbers occurred in May, and so that was sort of the market responding to widespread sheltering in place having sort of ended for a while throughout China. Not ended completely, but people were sort of out of their homes. Isolation was waning, and I think people were energized by that. So we're seeing those numbers for May. June, it's going to be a completely different story.
It's possibly going to be quite different in the sense that now we've got the high alert situation here in Beijing as we saw new cases of COVID-19 to be on an uptick. So that's definitely something that we're all very aware of, and it takes the efforts of everybody nowadays to sort of keep the numbers down. So in terms of the renters then, so these who are not buying property, but they need to pay for the monthly rent, so therefore tenants can stay in the property, and now they seem to have a new idea in terms of preference.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how the pandemic has changed people's mindset of how to rent or buy a house. I can use one of my friends as an example because he has been working in Beijing for nearly 10 years. And before the pandemic, he never thought of buying a house in the city, and he used to rent an apartment, and he has some other like tenants and shared a house with him. But right after the pandemic, he decided to buy a house. So he told me and my other friend in March, and saying he started to checking out the houses in Beijing, about the transportation is convenient, and also the house is not that old. But just in April, 1 month later, and he showed up in the house like a registration bureau and to finally purchase the house, and all these things just happened in a month. And also we asked him like why he decided to buy the house. He said he chose 2 or 3 houses to have the inspection tour, but 2 other houses just sold out in just 2 days, so he decided to buy the house as soon as possible. And he used to be a person who liked to share a house with other renters. And also I think maybe because he has been working for nearly 10 years, so he has some save up, so he can't afford to buy a house at the moment. But many people, maybe they are just new to the workforce, they just got a job, so they don't have this kind of freedom in buying a house, so they decided to uplift their lifestyle by just don't share a house with other renters, just rent a house by themselves. And if we check the figures from Ke.com, which is an online housing agency, and they released a survey on home renters' preference under the influences of COVID-19 in April. So in this survey, they collected 3,280 samples. So among the interviewees, over 63% of renters said now they consider to change an apartment after the pandemic, including both those who had a demand before and those who had intention due to the pandemic. And also among the top 7 considerations, the top 3 were the rent cannot be too high, and also not far from workplaces, and whole apartment renting. It's interesting to see that actually the first 2 factors, like the transportation, convenience, and also the price of the renting, these factors were the traditional factors considered by those renters, even though there is this year or a year ago or several years ago. But the new factor show up in this list is the whole apartment renting.
So you don't want to be sharing with other people, and it's after being cooped up in behind 4 walls for X amount of time. So, Patrick, what do you think? What explains people's change in preference that way?
Well, I think people who have had roommates in the past may have found themselves in a situation where, one roommate may have been affected. And this goes not only Beijing or China, but throughout the world. Where COVID is concerned, a roommate may have been infected or knew someone who had been. So that roommate situation kind of blows up, and you have to then quarantine yourself elsewhere and perhaps then find another place. I think that's become sort of the unexpected factor in all this that isn't really reflected in a lot of these surveys, and so many of these real estate surveys are done throughout the world. But one by Rent Cafe in Los Angeles reported a drop, and this was in March, so this is in the thick of sheltering in place in the U.S., but a drop in apartment searches. Mainly, it suggested, okay, they're squatting in their homes. They'll resume the search once COVID starts to fade away. It has not faded away in the United States. It's intensified. There's 2.2 million cases right now. But the good news for rental companies is they are poised to flourish, as Wired Magazine put it this month. What does that mean? It means that the rental companies are waiting with bated breath for COVID to recede. So people and the demand will once again skyrocket. So they don't want to drop the rate too much. They want to drop the rent too much, because once they do that, they can never bring it back to where it was. And I think that goes for the rental market everywhere.
But that also kind of assumes that it's the buyer's market, or it's the renter company's market, in the sense that they have more of the power to determine how much the rent will be.
Yeah. I mean, right now the renter or the buyer has a bit more leverage, right? Because, fewer people are actually wanting to, in the midst of the havoc that's going on worldwide, uproot and find a new place.
Not what it is
but
anymore.
once argument's sake, let's give it a year from now.
More people
They'll
selling
certainly
because they
be
don't have the income.
the other way around.
Less people
Yeah,
buying 'cause they don't have the
you're still quite confident in that sense.
I think so. I mean, and look, priorities change. People's preferences change over time. I mean, and I don't know many people who would prefer a roommate over living alone. I mean, some do because obviously financially it's more sound. But you know, you lose other things, privacy, you know, a quality of life that you only have sometimes with solitude.
Yeah, true. Well, Huangshan, what do you think explains people's shift in attitude? I think during the coronavirus outbreak, people may stay more time in their house, and definitely after that, they want to improve their life quality within their financial capability. So I think the easier way for them compared to buying a new house, maybe renting a better house will be the first option. So in this way, before the coronavirus, maybe when you complain about your roommates, it's just about, oh, you don't have much privacy, or maybe your roommate's super annoying, not have a really high hygiene standard, or just maybe disturb your lifestyle and or some of your working schedules in the house. But now there's another level of hygiene standard, which means that you don't know where your roommate has been to. What if he or she has been to an infected area? Then he or she may bring back the germs or the virus. So to protect yourself, maybe people want to change to whole rent apartment more than just share the rooms with other people. And also now I think people just want to have a better life. You know, after the coronavirus, you just realize you should treat yourself better. Don't sacrifice some joys in life, and then maybe to start with renting an apartment by your own.
Yeah, I really don't think you can understate the point you just made, which was that the factor that was never there before was, well, what if my roommate, what is my roommate doing when they're not here? Where are they going? Are they wearing a mask? Are they disinfecting as they should? And it's a concern that you should have, because a roommate is a member of your family in a sense. I mean, you're with that person kind of like your colleagues. You're around these people more than sometimes your own blood family members. So it's something I think that the rental and real estate market needs to sort of take into account, is the fact that, people do want to branch out maybe and live on their own, but at the same time, you can't hike their rates immediately. People have been putting aside money. That's what they're banking on. That's what the rental markets are hoping. You've been putting aside some money, you haven't been spending as much, so possibly you might be poised to make a big move, in the coming months.
Yeah, I think if you had the choices of either spending on improving your living condition, i.e. your abode, or splurging on a handbag, or splurging on expensive meals and stuff, maybe the first option is actually the one that will significantly enhance how you feel about your life.
Yeah, and realtors also have a magic number. I believe it's 28%. It's just one of those numbers. I mean, we read 30%, 25%, but 28% is that sweet spot of, you don't want to exceed that number, that percentage of your salary on renting or real estate costs. So if you're spending more than 28% of what you make on where you live, you are putting yourself in financial straits.
Yeah, but
and I wonder if that percentage would be different from spot to spot around the globe, because the salary level is different and all kinds of expenses levels could be different.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there is a caveat there. But you raise a really good point here. That is, we all have these really glamorous dreams, and improving where you live could be one, but it's not that simple. It's not like, you see this really ideal real estate on Zillow or whatever listing website you visit, and then the next day you can move in there. Mm-hmm. So it's not easy. And
you got the money,
I guess, how do we get there?
Well, it's a really hard decision because the first thing we want to talk about is still the permanent topic, the price, how much it will cost for a better or more beautiful apartment. So for many, newcomers like in the workforce, they still prefer to rent a house maybe near their working place. But sometimes if you work in the CBD, the housing price is pretty high even for a renter. And if you want to share the apartment with other roommates, it may save you half of the rent. So for example, if you just want to rent a whole 1-bedroom apartment in this CBD areas, and the price may range from 6,000 to 11,000 yuan a month. And if you just choose to rent the apartment but sharing it like with other roommates, it can save you maybe 50 to 60%. And if you still if for example, if you just want to pay a certain amount of rent, but you want to change from co-sharing a house with owning this house like by yourself, maybe you need to sacrifice the distance to your workplace. For example, you can move from the 3rd ring road to the 5th ring road, but you just need to take more time in the commuting.
So moving further out of the city center. And well, that seems to be the case everywhere when town center is usually a lot more expensive to rent, and in exchange for maybe a more spacious apartment or better environment outside of the house, that kind of thing, and then people kind of move out a bit more just to make it happen. Well, Patrick, what's your observation here when it comes to, making these tough decisions?
Well, I've never owned in my life. I've always rented. I lived in New York City for almost 6 years, and that's certainly not a place that I would consider affordable unless you're doing reasonably well with income, and that fluctuates. And places like San Francisco and a host of others where the rent is so astronomical given who's moved in. Silicon Valley, we know that so many places there, the values skyrocketed because, that's the tech culture. So many folks have moved there and inflated the values. You're seeing that in so many places now. And the rental crisis now being, will the landlord forgive
the new
the
people
rent
want to
that
live
cannot be made
next
up
to where they work
during COVID-19? That's a thing that continues to evolve in the United States. But where was I? What do I think about this?
Development in Google. No,
we're in a time where we have to sort of reevaluate our priorities in life, and you hope that
nuclear holocaust.
When it comes to rent, it doesn't hurt to have a look around now while COVID-19 is sort of affecting everybody,
people that are going to inherit the planet,
maybe
guards at those
call a landlord or two and just see what's out there. I think you'll find right now the prices are dropping a bit, but it's something that will probably get back right to where it was before too long.
You think so? Well, see, I saw this article in the Los Angeles Times talking about a recent drop of property prices, including rent prices in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Which, Patrick, you've just told us how expensive it is and the reasons why. And the drop in housing prices for the simple reason that tech companies are now allowing more and more people of their employees to work from afar.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it seems like they're not coming back to the office anytime soon.
That's right.
And especially if you work in the tech industry, I suppose it's easier to make it happen well, of course, ensure your productivity and work in a different place. And with the tech support they get, well, if you work for a tech company, then it's easier to be made happen. And therefore, you don't need to have so many people that live in San Francisco to go to work. And because of this drop in demand, housing price actually went down.
This must be a nightmare for not only the real estate market in Silicon Valley, but also for the corporations themselves who thrive on an office work culture that wants you to spend as much time as you possibly can there.
Wow.
And once you're there, they got you there. sleep there, free food, on and on and on. Goodbye to that. And what does that mean? Mass exodus from places like that.
Well, if that does happen, that would be good news for whoever that's looking for an apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, well, there's always winners and losers in the sense that the winners are possibly going to be people who possibly can be free of that kind of tech bro culture, and then the kind of 24 hours around the clock working on campus in these companies, and maybe the culture or employment will look quite different after COVID-19, and it would of course affect the economy within the region.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns, and it's like trying to follow a real estate trend is like chasing a shadow in a way. I don't really know where it leads. It's I'm certainly not schooled on real estate trends outside of what I've been reading lately, but I'll use my parents as a quick example. They live in North Carolina and have had their home on the market for more than a year, and continue even through COVID to have it on the market. And as you can imagine, you don't have many folks dropping by to see the property. It happens sporadically, but what you find is people right now, they're hunkered down, they're thinking about their next move, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be popping right now.
Yeah, and also location whenever it comes to real estate. When we're looking at the figures from the top tier cities in China, then, well, usually there's a lot of people who try to swarm into the city centers and find a life there. But let's say if you live in rural America or a smaller city, then I guess the population inflow might not be as ginormous.
Well, not to mention you've got 40 million Americans at least filing for unemployment benefits. It's not the time right now to jump ship from your apartment or your house unless you truly can't make that rent. And then and we've been hearing a lot of that, by the way. So we shouldn't forget about the economy and the job market back in the States as well. It's just in a terrible place.
And also we shouldn't forget about the newly grads, the fresh faces that are coming into the job market this year. And it's not the most promising season to graduate into, but no matter what, we're seeing these graduates also looking for jobs and possibly housing once they get a job. So what does that look like according to the figures right now?
I think maybe for the fresh graduates, they still prefer to rent a cheaper apartment. And now they have another alternative, is that they can still choose to go to this maybe emerging first-tier cities compared to the traditional first-tier cities, because all these new first-tier cities, they want to offer some preferential policies to secure these talents in their city, which will definitely create more growth points to the city's development. And also, as Patrick earlier mentioned, maybe around 30% of the income and rent ratio will be the most ideal for those fresh graduates. And if you want to have this kind of ratio to realize this, maybe it's easier for you if you choose to stay in the second tier or the rising first tier cities.
Yeah, but those cities are expensive as well now.
No, not really compared to Beijing and Shanghai. The renting is definitely cheaper, but maybe at the same time, your income may also be lower. But it's still the percentage. If the percentage is okay, then it will be better.
Yeah, and the reality is that a lot of people are spending 60%, if not 70% of their monthly salary on rent. And that becomes a problem. And that is the reality that a lot of people have been going through even prior to COVID-19 in big cities like San Francisco and the US, take an example like that, or, the big cities here in Beijing. And I mean, this is a tough question. Is there any way out in that sense? It's a balancing act, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think it comes to, what can I cut? Do I have a car that I could sell because the city's public transportation is so good? That might be a question someone might ask themselves. What can I sort of What fat can I trim in the meantime? I guess would be it. But other than that, hold on for hope and hold on to the ones you love, because there is an end in sight on this.
Yeah. Figuring out your priority and just make the plan according to the things that you value the most: convenience, traffic, or life quality.
Yeah, well, maybe draw a chart, a Venn diagram, figure out your priorities, do some calculations, and budgeting always helps in this kind of circumstance. And we'll be back on Roundtable with more discussion as we talk about Victoria's Secret.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. Roundtable. Roundtable.
Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day. Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal.
You're listening to a flashback of Roundtable, an in-depth discussion on the hottest topics.
It's Monday.
In China.
What is it? A goddamn holiday? Yeah, we missed the first 60 seconds.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, Wei Yang, joined by Huang Shen and Patrick Flannery. Coming up, Victoria's Secret has gone into administration in the UK, putting stores and jobs at risk. The company has been struggling even before the coronavirus outbreak, and let's track the rise and fall
To close yourself, the first thing to do is take a
company. And you will be greeted with a special segment on Roundtable. That is, we answer your questions in our heart-to-heart segment. If you have a question, we answer it for you. All you need to do is send it voice memo or email to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com, and we give you that reply on the live show. If you're listening to our show on demand, you can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcasts and our Qingfeng Tiaopin app. And now on Roundtable, to continue our discussion. Victoria's Secret is the largest lingerie retailer in the U.S. and has been for several decades. It had a role in defining what sexy is in the modern day via its racy lingerie and annual runway shows before the Me Too movement, though, in the U.S. After years of scandals and declining sales, Victoria's Secret is struggling to survive through the coronavirus pandemic, with its UK division gone into administration. So its business in the UK is definitely in a lot of trouble. What's the details of that?
So now if we take a look at a situation in the UK, and hundreds of jobs are under threat after the UK Arnold Victoria's Secret fell into administration. So the retailer has like 25 UK stores and 784 employees have been on furlough, while non-essential stores are closed under government lockdown rules.